which makes them feel temporarily better. Okay? But it's not lasting. When you actually increase autoimmunity against this gland and spill out more hormone, yay, I felt really good for a few days, but it didn't last. And that's one of the things that you have to be aware of is don't get confused or tricked into believing that the iodine was actually making the benefit. It may actually be driving this immune tank to attack the thyroid and cause then more production or spill out. And now this underactive thyroid has suddenly become hyperactive for a bit, and all the peripheral tissues are, woohoo, feels so great, but it's not sustainable. Okay? When we look then at this, when the thyroid is impaired in its function, or thyroid conversion is impaired in its function, it may be a GI problem. Okay, not G.I. Joe. He's doing a good job over here. Gastrointestinal. Right? So the GI system may be imbalanced. We may need to restore good gut flora through a probiotic. And in order to maintain this, we may also have to look upstream and see what is liver function, because 60% of that thyroid hormone is converted in the liver to active form thyroid. So the liver plays a major role in a functional perspective. Okay? What are some things or symptoms of a dysfunctioning liver? What are symptoms of a dysfunctioning liver? Okay, so again, thinning hair, or the coarseness of my hair has changed because the proteins that are being processed through the system going to the hair may be changing. What else? Dry skin, which we had talked about thyroid, but especially dry skin that starts to crack and loses its suppleness. Why? The liver actually metabolizes fats, and essential fats like gamma-linoleic acid or GLA or borage seed oil is an essential fat that if the liver can't utilize that and give it back to the skin starts to have a cracked appearance. How many of you have seen children with fissures or cracks in their hands and they're bleeding? Okay. How many of you in the cold weather, we get really cold here in the winter, notice that your fingers and your knuckles start to crack? That may actually be a sign of impaired fatty metabolism in your body. Okay, fatty acid metabolism. Other signs of fatty acid metabolism failure. All of our hormones start to go down, meaning we start to feel more irritable around our menstrual cycle. Guys, we start to lose our testosterone levels, so we start to lose our muscle mass and our drive. Okay? Those are indicators of loss of ideal function of fatty acid metabolism. If you actually see that when you eat fats, you don't process them well, they pass through, they cause you to have a greasy stool, that may be impaired functioning of liver and gallbladder. So a lot of people will come in and they say, I don't think I have any food sensitivities. Well, do you eat fats? No. Do you eat meat? No. Why? Because it just doesn't agree with me. Well, that's an indicator that your gallbladder and your liver aren't functioning the way they used to. If you're intentionally avoiding fatty foods or sweet foods, I can't handle coconut oil anymore. I can't handle olive oil. I used to be able to eat that. I'm vegan, but now it feels like nuts and seeds and oily things just don't process well in my system. Likely dealing with some type of fatty acid metabolism fault and something going on with the liver. Now, what else do we notice though? Multiple chemical sensitivities as well as metal sensitivities. Oh, that's just a rash where I had my wedding ring. Oh, that little ring against my tummy, that's just where I wear my belt buckle, and so I just have to put another layer between my belt buckle and my tummy so that if that metal touches my tummy, I get this big rash. Okay? That is an indicator of liver detoxification pathway failure. Right? Oh, that perfume, I just go to church and all those perfumes are so overwhelming. It's nauseating. It gives me a headache. That's an indicator of your liver's failure of detoxification pathways. So start to pay attention to the things that you're sensitive and irritated by, and it may be a window into what's occurring in your liver. A clinical pearl that I found: sores along the base of the scalp and on the top of the scalp. Okay? Things that look like little pimples, those are often indicators of liver dysfunction. The scalp is very, very oily, and when the liver isn't detoxifying efficiently, we start to detoxify through our skin, the largest organ in the body. And this secondary detoxification pathway often becomes clogged, and you'll see scalp sores and scalp pimples when the liver's impaired. Okay? Something that we've just seen very, very consistently clinically. So again, we see liver function, GI dysfunction or function, adrenal function, autoimmunity, and parathyroid, thyroid function together. When the parathyroid starts to go or becomes imbalanced, parathyroid most often is sensitive to heavy metals. And when those heavy metals overwhelm the system, the parathyroid is so sensitive to it that it becomes the first to react. We see that a lot with dentistry. When people have actually extracted or removed amalgams too rapidly or haven't had the appropriate detoxification pathways and support there, they end up getting a heavy metal toxicity, and the parathyroids are often the first to be affected. Okay? Everybody clear to that point? You get a lot of information. Can you go turn the air back on?
Yes.
I think it turned off at 8 or 7:30 or whatever time it is now. At least for me, I think they're going to come up here and find like 12 skeletons sitting in here tomorrow. When did we move to Arizona? Okay, so this is thyroid. When we look then at recovering thyroid, what do we want to look for? Again, restoring pathways for detoxification, one of the primary things we use is something called glutathione. The number one antioxidant found naturally in the body is glutathione. When glutathione levels go down, we know that the liver is impaired, and all of us would benefit from glutathione. When we talk about different types of brain demises, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, what are the first things we want to use? Glutathione. Okay? When we see enlarged thyroids, what is one of the first things we use? Glutathione. Because glutathione actually helps to reduce the swelling. We also use selenium, which helps to block the autoimmune attack against the thyroid, and it helps to assist us in treating the autoimmunity and the antibody response. Okay? These two, this is very high in a product we have called Oxycell. It's a cream. You apply it directly over the thyroid. We've had many, many individuals who have actually had ultrasounded nodules and cysts in the thyroid. By using glutathione and Oxycell, actually reduce the cysts and measure those again on ultrasound. Okay? Pretty fascinating. We've seen measurable enlarged goiter thyroids reduced by using glutathione directly over that. In combination with what? Elimination of the triggers. So again, if you are one who has a response to gluten or reaction to gluten, eliminate it. Help your body respond better. That's one of the keys. So an elimination diet, an elimination of the toxins, a correction of liver. Okay? When we look at liver, don't just look at glutathione. A lot of people are familiar with the methylation processes. So we use methyl groups or methyl donors like SAMe, like trimethylglycine, B12 and folic acid. And then we also look at the detoxifiers in this glutathione pathway like alpha-ketoglutarate, N-acetylcysteine, acetyl L-carnitine. All of those are found in different products for detoxification of liver, which also assist then in thyroid function. Other things that a lot of people are familiar with respect to liver, milk thistle, dandelion. A lot of people have used those historically and have good results. Again, though, glutathione is one of the most important targets that we use for helping restore function. Okay? Next thing that we look at, not iodine, but precursors to stimulate. If the thyroid is so weak, sometimes we have to use some glandulars to actually give precursor building blocks for thyroid if we need to give it a break. Okay? So there may be a season when you would be on a prescription like Cytomel, which is T3, or Armour Thyroid, which sometimes is utilized as or Nature Throid, which is a glandular that has both T4 and T3 in it. Or sometimes we just use a glandular in different forms that come as preparations from different supplemental companies. Okay? So sometimes it's there. What if, though, the problem with thyroid is back upstream? What if it's actually at the pituitary? What's the name of the hormone that's released from the pituitary that stimulates thyroid function? Thyroid stimulating hormone, that's right. TSH. Thyroid stimulating hormone. So TSH actually is released by the pituitary to stimulate production of T4 at the thyroid. Sometimes it's a pituitary problem. Pituitary is one of those glands that is very, very sensitive to all feedbacks. Just breathing and swallowing causes a rocking of the upper palate, the vomer plate, and the cribriform plate, which the sinuses come through, and the sella turcica, which is the Turkish saddle that the pituitary actually rests in. So the pituitary sits in this little saddle like this, and the vomer and the cribriform plate that comes forward, this vomer or plowshare is actually the top or the roof of the mouth, and just by swallowing and breathing heavily, it causes a rocking of this pituitary gland and activation or stimulation of it. Okay? What happens if, though, this palate, now we're getting too many things here, if you can follow me just for a moment more. What happens, though, when we take and we brace the teeth in an adolescent and block or stop the palate from growing? What happens to the movement of the pituitary? It's impaired. Okay? So we can actually see then prematurely stopping movement of this facial area, or squeezing down facial growth, or holding facial growth at a stop point, may actually affect later on pituitary output and may then impair my thyroid output. I think it'll be interesting to actually do a study at some point over the next few years to correlate. I had braces at this age and I had a thyroid demise at this age. I think it would be actually a very fascinating just review of research, because I think that that actually has more of a detrimental effect than we realize. When we were kids, remember we went through the ugly phase? Remember big glasses, high bangs, little party in the back, nice and trim tight in the front, and we just went through the ugly phase. Now we have our kids, we can't let them go through an ugly phase. They're in braces at 8 years old because they got mom's teeth. You know how big mom's full-grown teeth are in the little child's face. And then there's no room for those others because God didn't know what He was doing when He put 32 teeth in that face, so 34. So we end up pulling them all out, right? Because they were so crowded. So we pulled out 4 or 6, so there was room, and then we could squeeze them all into those holes. Well, what do we end up with? We end up with an adult face that has an upper face that's this wide, and when they smile, a mouth that's this wide. Okay? I've actually seen adults whose teeth were so cramped and narrowed in that they actually had to have braces as adults to allow their teeth to move forward into an adult posture or position because they were retainers all their lives. Now we don't wear retainers. What do we have right behind the front teeth? Nice little permanent metal post to hold the teeth from gapping. Why do the teeth gap? Because every time you swallow, you exert between 3 and 6 pounds of pressure of tongue thrust, okay, just by swallowing. So your tongue actually becomes the retainer of your teeth. So if you have to wear a retainer the rest of your life after braces, or have a permanent metal bar to hold those teeth together, guess what? The normal facies that you would have grown to has been impaired and actually braced and held down. I'm sure that we'll get all kinds of comments and some tomatoes thrown from a bigger crowd. But I'd really like to see the research that correlates with some of these symptoms that we're seeing now. Okay? I've actually had dentists tell me that they have had sinus problems that were created by having orthodontia too early in their lives, where they have impaired breathing airways, sleep apnea,